In a Fort Braxton training room, Sergeant Miller, a mountain of muscle, smirked, expecting a meek civilian volunteer. 30-year-old Sarah Jenkins stepped forward. What happened next defied all expectations. A move so lethal, so swift, it left 150 recruits utterly silent. The August sun beat down on Fort Braxton with the oppressive weight of a physical presence. It was a Tuesday, indistinguishable from any other in the sprawling North Carolina military installation. Inside Building C, the air conditioning hummed a monotonous, struggling tune, a sound that had become the background music to Sarah Jenkins's life for the past 3 years. At 30 years old, Sarah had cultivated an existence of quiet, meticulous order. Her day began with the precision of a military drill. At 6:30 a.m. sharp, her sensible sedan would pull into the civilian contractor lot, always near the back entrance. A swipe of her badge, a descent down a flight of sterile concrete stairs, and she would arrive in her windowless basement office. Her workspace was an extension of her personality, a fortress of efficiency. Deep blue folders were arranged in a color-coded system on her gray metal desk, each labeled with a stark, white sticker. A reusable, eco-friendly coffee cup sat next to her monitor, its contents a carefully brewed dark roast that would fuel her until precisely noon. To her colleagues in the Administrative Support Division, Sarah was a ghost in the machine, reliable, quiet, and utterly unremarkable. She processed after-action reports, compiled equipment inventories, and maintained personnel files with a methodical grace that bordered on invisible. She was the steady hand that kept the bureaucratic heart of Fort Braxton beating, yet she remained as unseen as the building's wiring. Soldiers, young and old, would pass through her section on various errands, dropping off paperwork or inquiring about a request lost in the labyrinthine system. To them, Sarah, with her neat brown bob, simple khaki pants, blue blouse, and thin-frame glasses, was just another part of the background, as functional and forgettable as the filing cabinets that lined the hall. But the paperwork that crossed her desk told stories. Through the dry, technical language of official reports, she pieced together the lives of soldiers she would never meet. She knew that Staff Sergeant Evelyn Reed consistently shattered physical fitness records, but struggled with the written exams for promotion. Her file a mix of glowing commendations for leadership and frustrated notes on her administrative shortcomings. She understood that Second Lieutenant David Shunn was a tactical prodigy in war games, but had a tendency to micromanage, creating friction that required careful mentoring. And she felt a quiet sympathy for Private First Class Maria Garcia, a logistics whiz whose attendance was suffering due to family issues, her supervisor recommending counseling and a flexible schedule. These narratives filtered through her consciousness, absorbed with the same detached precision she applied to everything else. She found a quiet satisfaction in the completion of tasks, in bringing order to the chaos of information. Her small, off-base apartment mirrored this philosophy. The furniture was minimalist and functional. The books on her shelves organized by subject, the kitchen stocked with just enough ingredients for her weekly rotation of healthy meals. She maintained a careful distance in her personal life, exchanging pleasantries with neighbors, but never allowing conversations to stray into personal territory. When asked about her past, she had a well-rehearsed, vague answer about a previous logistics job in Virginia and a business degree from UNC Charlotte. The details were always fuzzy, a deliberate fog she created to deflect further inquiry. It wasn't a lie, not exactly, but it was a carefully curated version of the truth, designed to keep people at arm's length. She couldn't explain why, but she felt an instinctual need to avoid scrutiny, a sense that too much focus might reveal a crack in the carefully constructed facade of her life. Her memory, before North Carolina, was a blur she had learned not to question. This particular Tuesday morning, she was engrossed in a report from a recent night navigation exercise. A squad of recruits, through a simple calculation error, had wandered into a live-fire zone. No one was hurt, but the near miss generated a mountain of paperwork. Sarah meticulously cross-referenced radio logs, GPS data, and witness statements, her mind easily navigating the complex military terminology and safety protocols. Her understanding of tactical procedures was far more comprehensive than her job description would suggest, a fact she never consciously acknowledged. At 10:15 a.m., the routine was shattered. A crisp, impersonal voice crackled over the building's PA system. All civilian contractors with appropriate security clearance are requested to report to Training Room Delta for a mandatory demonstration on defensive tactics. Attendance is required. Sarah saved her work, locked her terminal, and gathered a stack of deep blue folders. As she walked up the stairs and toward the second floor, she felt a strange, unfamiliar flutter in her chest, a flicker of something that was not part of her carefully ordered world. Training Room Delta was a vast, cavernous space, the air thick with the scent of sweat and cleaning solution. The main floor was a sea of crisp, uniformed recruits, 150 of them arranged in neat rows of metal folding chairs. Their youthful faces, a mixture of anticipation and bravado, were all turned toward the front of the room. There, standing behind a podium, was Major General Eleanor Vance. General Vance was a woman forged from discipline and experience. In her mid-50s, with short, silver hair impeccably styled and eyes that seemed to miss nothing, she commanded the room without raising her voice. Her record was legendary at Fort Braxton, multiple combat deployments, a chest full of medals, and a reputation for tactical brilliance that was matched only by her unwavering integrity. She had a presence that inspired both awe and absolute loyalty. To her side, Drill Sergeant Miller was preparing the training area. He was a mountain of a man, standing well over 6 feet, his frame packed with the dense muscle of a career soldier. A faded scar cut across his left eyebrow, a permanent reminder of a past conflict. His movements were economical and precise as he laid out gray rubber mats, each motion radiating controlled power that made the recruits sit a little straighter. Miller was known for being brutally demanding but fair, a man who could break a soldier down and build them back stronger, instilling in them the skills needed to survive the unthinkable. Sarah found herself clustered near the back wall with about 30 other civilian contractors, administrators, IT specialists, and supply coordinators. They were the invisible cogs of the military machine, professionals who had chosen careers deliberately removed from the physical realities of combat. An unspoken discomfort rippled through their group. They shuffled their feet, avoided eye contact, and instinctively created a buffer of space between themselves and the uniformed personnel. General Vance began to speak, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the low murmur of the room. In operational theaters, she explained, you will encounter civilian populations. Understanding how untrained individuals react under stress is essential for planning protection operations and evacuation procedures. It is your duty to protect those who cannot protect themselves. She spoke of the psychological impact of violence, of the way fear could paralyze or provoke irrational behavior. As she talked, Sarah's attention drifted to Sergeant Miller. There was something in the way he moved, the subtle shift of his weight, the way he unconsciously scanned the room, maintaining awareness of all exits, that triggered a strange resonance deep within her. It was like hearing a forgotten song from a distant past. The angle of his shoulders, the balanced economy of his stance. It was a language her body seemed to understand, even if her mind could not translate it. The feeling was unsettling, a flicker of déjà vu for a life she was certain she had never lived. To demonstrate these principles, General Vance announced, her gaze sweeping over the civilian staff huddled at the back. We will need a volunteer. A wave of palpable anxiety washed over the contractors. Janet from HR subtly stepped behind a large printer. Marcus from IT suddenly found the scuff on his shoe intensely fascinating. This was their world: spreadsheets, networks, and personnel files. A physical demonstration with a man like Sergeant Miller was a foreign and terrifying concept. The recruits sensed their discomfort, and a low ripple of amusement spread through their ranks. Whispers and stifled chuckles could be heard. They were about to see a confirmation of their own perceived superiority, a live performance of the gap between a trained soldier and an ordinary civilian. The anticipation was thick in the air. But as Sarah watched Miller take his position on the mat, something stirred within her. The scenario, the setup, the very geometry of the room unlocked a cascade of fragmented sensations. The rhythmic thumping of helicopter blades, the heavy weight of a pack on her shoulders, the metallic taste of adrenaline. The images were fleeting, gone before she could grasp them, but the feeling they left behind was one of profound and unnerving familiarity. She found herself automatically assessing the room, not as an office worker, but as something else. She noted escape routes, potential cover, the tactical positioning of every person present. Without conscious thought, without a single logical reason she could articulate, her hand went up. "I'll volunteer," she said, her voice quiet but clear in the suddenly silent room. The reaction was instantaneous. The recruits' amusement turned to outright laughter. A few nudged each other, whispering jokes about the file clerk playing soldier. Even her fellow contractors looked at her with a mixture of embarrassment and disbelief, as if she had broken some unspoken civilian code. General Vance's sharp eyes settled on Sarah. She took in the sensible clothes, the professional demeanor, the stack of blue folders Sarah had placed on a nearby table. It was the picture of an administrative assistant. Yet, the general's experienced gaze detected something else. A subtle stillness in Sarah's posture, a centered confidence that was entirely at odds with her role. "Are you certain, Ms.?" The general paused, reading her name tag. "Jenkins." This demonstration can be physically demanding. Sergeant Miller is a professional, but the experience can be overwhelming. Sarah met the general's gaze directly. "I understand, ma'am. I'd like to help." As she walked toward the center of the room, the world seemed to shift on its axis. The chatter of the crowd faded into a dull roar. Her awareness narrowed, focusing with preternatural clarity on the space around her. Her breathing deepened. Her weight settled evenly on the balls of her feet. Her hands, which had been clutching her folders moments before, now hung relaxed at her sides, poised and ready. It was a transformation so subtle it was almost invisible, yet so profound it felt like shedding a skin. Her body was remembering something her mind had long forgotten. Sergeant Miller watched her approach with a confident grin. He had performed this demonstration countless times. The volunteers were always the same, timid, awkward, and completely out of their element. His job was to be controlled, to demonstrate a technique slowly and safely, making an educational point for the recruits while ensuring the civilian wasn't overly embarrassed. His confidence was built on a foundation of experience. He knew the predictable patterns of fear. Most civilians froze, their minds overwhelmed. Some would flail wildly, their movements clumsy and ineffective. His plan was simple, a slow, telegraphed grab to the shoulder, which he would then use to demonstrate a basic grip break and defensive posture. "What I want you to do, Ms. Jenkins," Miller said, his voice resonating with authority, "is to react naturally. Don't think. Just do whatever feels instinctive." The word instinctive was a key, turning a lock deep in the recesses of Sarah's mind. A torrent of fragmented memories, sharp and vivid, flashed behind her eyes. The green-tinged view through night vision goggles. The urgent, whispered commands over a crackling radio. The controlled chaos of a high-stakes operation where a single heartbeat could separate success from failure. For a dizzying second, she felt like she was in two places at once. The sterile training room and a humid, dangerous jungle somewhere far away. Miller began his approach. His steps were measured, his balance perfect. It was a textbook demonstration of controlled aggression. He extended his right hand, aiming for her shoulder in a slow, deliberate arc. The movement was designed to give her ample time to react in the clumsy, predictable way he expected. He had seen every possible civilian response. He had never seen this. As his fingers were a mere inch from their target, Sarah's body moved with a fluid efficiency that defied logic. It was a response born not of conscious thought, but of pure, conditioned muscle memory. Her left hand rose in a perfect, intercepting arc, not blocking his arm but deflecting it, redirecting his energy with pinpoint precision. Simultaneously, she stepped forward and to her left, a small, economical movement that placed her inside his reach and at the perfect angle to exploit his momentum. Her right hand found his wrist. It wasn't a grab, it was a connection. Her fingers landed on specific pressure points, nerves nestled close to the bone that most people didn't know existed. She applied a calibrated pressure, just enough to control, not to injure. It was the touch of someone with an intimate, tactical understanding of human anatomy. What happened next took less than 2 seconds. Using Miller's own forward momentum against him, Sarah pivoted on the ball of her foot. Her hips shifted with the grace of a dancer, her body a perfect conduit of leverage and physics. The force of his 260-pound frame, which he had intended to use on her, was turned back on him completely. Sergeant Miller became airborne. He was lifted from his feet before his brain could even register the threat. The throw was executed with such flawless precision that he had no chance to counter, no opportunity to even adjust his fall. He sailed through the air in a clean arc and landed flat on his back on the rubber mat. The impact was solid, emphatic, a sound that echoed through the cavernous room like a gunshot. It was a controlled landing designed to prevent serious injury, but left no doubt as to who was in absolute control. The world stopped. The only sound in Training Room Delta was the lingering hum of the air conditioning. 150 recruits sat frozen, their mouths agape, their earlier smirks erased and replaced with expressions of pure, unadulterated shock. The civilian contractors at the back looked as if they had just witnessed an act of magic. Sergeant Miller lay on the mat for a full 5 seconds, staring at the ceiling. His expression wasn't one of pain, but of profound, systemic disbelief. In his long and decorated career, he had been thrown, tackled, and knocked down by formidable opponents in the chaos of real combat. But this was different. This wasn't a brawl. It was an execution. The technique was flawless, a symphony of timing and leverage that felt less like a fight and more like a law of physics being demonstrated on his own body. He recognized the move, or at least the principles behind it. He had seen something similar only once before, during a highly classified briefing on unconventional warfare tactics. The instructors were shadowy figures who weren't supposed to exist, teaching techniques that weren't in any official manual. The move was designed for ghost operatives, for situations where plausible deniability was paramount. It was impossible for a file clerk to know it. General Vance stepped forward, her casual interest now sharpened to a razor's edge. As Miller slowly rolled to his feet, shaking his head to clear the fog, her intense gaze was locked on Sarah. Sarah stood in the center of the mat, her breathing even, her glasses still perfectly perched on her nose. But the unassuming administrative assistant was gone. In her place stood someone else. Her posture remained balanced, her hands relaxed but ready. Her eyes, which moments before had been focused on paperwork, now scanned the room with a systematic, assessing gaze that missed nothing. "Where?" General Vance asked, her voice low but carrying the unmistakable weight of command. "Did you learn to do that?" The question seemed to break a spell. Sarah blinked, as if waking from a dream. The hyper-focused awareness receded, replaced by the familiar fog of her everyday consciousness. She looked down at Miller, who was now dusting off his uniform, then back at the general. Her expression was one of genuine, profound bewilderment. I'm not sure," she said, her voice barely a whisper. It just felt like the right thing to do. General Vance's eyes narrowed. That answer was not acceptable. She knew exactly what she had just seen. It was a variation of a specialized takedown known colloquially as the Phantom Throw, a move developed by an elite, clandestine unit. According to the briefing she'd attended years ago, fewer than a dozen operatives had ever mastered it. Most of them were presumed dead or had vanished off the grid. It was a technique taught only to those who operated in the deepest shadows of national security. Miller was now rotating his shoulder, his face a mask of confusion and grudging respect. The precision, the knowledge of pressure points, the flawless application of leverage against a man of his size and training. It spoke of years of relentless, specialized instruction. This wasn't a weekend self-defense class. This was the work of a master. 25 minutes later, Sarah sat in a room she never knew existed. It was a secure briefing room in the basement of Building C, windowless and sterile. The air was cold. The only furniture a metal table and 3 hard plastic chairs. Across from her sat General Vance, her face grim. Beside the general were 2 other men. One introduced himself as Colonel Hayes from Special Operations Command. The other, dressed in civilian clothes that failed to hide his military bearing, remained nameless. "Ms. Jenkins," General Vance began, her eyes fixed on a tablet displaying Sarah's personnel file. "Your demonstration this morning has raised some very serious questions. The capabilities you displayed are not reflected anywhere in your official records." Sarah shifted uncomfortably. The combined intensity of their gazes felt like a physical weight. "My file is accurate," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I have a business degree. I've only ever worked in administrative support. Your file states you have a standard secret clearance for routine paperwork processing," General Vance continued, ignoring her protest. "There is no mention of military service, law enforcement training, or any experience that would explain your ability to execute an advanced combat technique that is itself highly classified." The discrepancy was a glaring red flag, the kind of anomaly that triggered comprehensive security investigations. "I don't have any military training," Sarah insisted, but the words felt hollow, like a line read from script she no longer believed. "At least, I don't think I do. I don't remember any." Colonel Hayes leaned forward, his eyes sharp with professional interest. "You don't remember? That's a curious choice of words. Most people would say they never received such training." "What exactly do you remember about your life before Fort Braxton?" The question struck her with the force of a physical blow. She gripped the arms of her chair, trying to peer through the thick fog that shrouded her past. She saw flashes, unfamiliar faces, places that felt both foreign and known, but nothing concrete. "I remember college," she said slowly, struggling to form a coherent narrative. "Job interviews. But the details are fuzzy. I had some health issues a few years ago. A car accident. It affected my memory." "What kind of health issues?" the nameless officer asked, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "A head injury," Sarah replied, realizing as she said it that she couldn't recall a single detail of the incident itself. The crash, the hospital, the pain. She only remembered being told about it. "It was about 4 years ago. The doctor said I might have some permanent memory gaps." Colonel Hayes and his colleague exchanged a look that Sarah couldn't decipher, but sent a chill down her spine. The colonel made a few notes on his own tablet. Their questions became more specific, more probing, following a pattern that suggested they were familiar with cases of memory suppression. "Tell me about the accident," Hayes said. "Where did it happen? What were your injuries?" She couldn't. Her memory of the event was a collection of secondhand stories told to her by doctors and social workers she couldn't clearly picture. She remembered waking up in a hospital, but not how she got there. She tried to recall her life before the accident, her previous job in Virginia, friends, family, but all she found were gaping holes. It wasn't just forgetfulness. It was a systematic erasure. The interview continued for 2 hours. They dissected every piece of her life she could offer. Finally, Colonel Hayes looked up from his tablet. "Ms. Jenkins, the technique you used is taught to fewer than a dozen individuals in the entire U.S. military. All of them are part of a program so secret that its existence is denied. What are you suggesting?" Sarah whispered, a terrifying suspicion beginning to dawn. "We're suggesting," the nameless officer said, "that your official background is a fabrication. The memory loss, combined with your skills, indicates you've had experiences that have been deliberately suppressed." General Vance leaned back. "I'm gonna be direct. Your personnel records contain anomalies. Gaps in your employment history. Educational records that lack detail. Medical records from your accident that are inconsistent. We believe your identity may have been constructed." The foundation of Sarah's carefully ordered world began to crumble. The next morning, Sarah was driven 3 hours into the remote, forested mountains of western North Carolina. She arrived at a facility that did not appear on any map. A complex of low, nondescript buildings surrounded by high fences and armed guards. It was less a medical center and more a place where secrets were kept. She was introduced to Dr. Emily Carter, a psychiatrist with kind eyes and a sharp, analytical mind, who specialized in memory disorders and psychological trauma. For days, Sarah underwent a battery of tests, MRIs, neurological assessments, psychological evaluations. The process was invasive and exhausting. The most unsettling part was the discovery that her body held knowledge her mind could not access. In fitness tests, she performed like a conditioned athlete. When asked to demonstrate basic self-defense moves, her body responded with a fluid competence that shocked her. On the third day, Dr. Carter sat across from her, her expression serious. "Sarah," she began, "the evaluations have revealed some significant anomalies. Your memory loss was not the result of a car accident." Sarah's stomach clenched. "What do you mean?" "The MRI scans show evidence of highly sophisticated surgical intervention in the areas of your brain associated with memory formation," Dr. Carter explained gently. "The scarring patterns are consistent with experimental techniques used to compartmentalize or suppress traumatic memories. Furthermore, the medical records from your accident appear to have been fabricated to provide a cover story for your treatment and relocation." The words struck Sarah with the force of a physical blow. "Are you saying someone did this to me?" "They made me forget." Dr. Carter nodded slowly. "The procedure appears to have been performed 4 years ago. Everything you thought you knew about your life as Sarah Jenkins was likely constructed to hide who you were before." "Who am I?" Sarah whispered, the question hanging in the sterile air. "That's what we're trying to find out," Dr. Carter replied. "But based on your skills and the sophistication of the procedure, you are almost certainly involved in highly classified operations." She began experimental treatments, carefully designed to unlock the suppressed memories without causing a psychological collapse. The process was a torturous journey through a fractured landscape of her own mind. Fragments of experience, both real and impossible, began to surface. She remembered hidden training facilities where she was pushed beyond human limits. She remembered night insertions into hostile territory, moving like a ghost. She remembered teammates, their faces becoming clearer with each session. The breakthrough came on the 6th day. Dr. Carter asked an innocuous question about her favorite music. As Sarah mentioned a preference for classical compositions to help her concentrate, a dam broke in her mind. A flood of memories, coherent and overwhelming, crashed through the artificial barriers. "My name isn't Sarah Jenkins," she said suddenly, her voice resonating with a newfound confidence and authority. "It's Captain Sarah Jenkins, United States Army Special Operations Command, Task Force Omega." Dr. Carter leaned forward, her pen forgotten. "Tell me about Task Force Omega." The story poured out of her. Task Force Omega was an experimental unit, a ghost team of 12 operatives trained for missions that officially didn't exist. She remembered her teammates with startling, painful clarity. Ethan Bell, the comms genius. Olivia Hayes, the medic who was as deadly as she was healing. Samuel Lee, the demolitions expert. And she remembered the mission that destroyed them all. "Operation Nightfall," she said, the name tasting like ash. "We were sent to neutralize a terrorist cell that had acquired weapons-grade plutonium. The mission was compromised. We were betrayed by someone in our own chain of command. They had walked into a perfectly orchestrated ambush. My entire team was killed," she continued, her voice hardening with grief and rage. "I only survived because I was on Overwatch. They declared me killed in action, then they erased me. They told me it was the only way to keep me alive, to protect me from the traitors who were still out there." As the full, horrifying truth settled over her, Dr. Carter reached across the table. "Sarah, Captain Jenkins, I'm sorry for what you've endured, but you need to understand, your situation has just become infinitely more dangerous. The people who betrayed your team now know that a file clerk at Fort Braxton just used a classified combat technique. They know you're alive, and they know your memories are returning." As if on cue, the door to the evaluation room opened. General Vance stood there, her face grim, her posture radiating an urgent intensity. The time for quiet investigation was over. "Captain Jenkins," she said, using Sarah's real name for the first time. "We need to talk. Now." Intelligence chatter indicates hostile assets are mobilizing. They intend to eliminate you before you can identify the traitors who destroyed your unit. Sarah stood up. The years of quiet, ordered life as Sarah Jenkins fell away like a discarded cloak. The muscle memory, the tactical awareness, the unwavering resolve of Captain Jenkins flowed back into her, filling the void that had haunted her for 4 years. The quiet efficiency of the file clerk was now fused with the lethal precision of the special operator. She straightened into a perfect military bearing, a posture that felt more natural than breathing. "Ma'am," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I'm ready to finish the mission." The woman who walked out of that room was not the invisible paperwork clerk from the basement of Building C. She was Captain Sarah Jenkins, the last surviving member of Task Force Omega. She was back, and she had a score to settle. Somewhere, in the shadowy labyrinth of intelligence agencies and clandestine programs, the people who had orchestrated the betrayal were about to learn a terrible truth. You can't erase a ghost. And this ghost was coming for them. The hunt was on. The truth is out. Captain Jenkins is back. What do you think will happen next? Leave your theories in the comments below. Remember to comment respectfully and share this incredible story. Subscribe for more untold stories from the shadows. Hashtag military mystery, hashtag special ops, hashtag untold story, hashtag comment respect.